Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the council meeting for the 12th of October 2021, which I now declare open. Although members of the public can't join us in person tonight, our meetings remain open to the public via the live stream on our website, and I extend a warm welcome to all of you who are watching online. Tonight's council meeting is being streamed through Zoom in light of the current COVID-19 restrictions. Please be sure to check the Department of Health and Human Services website for further information and updates on COVID restrictions. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I want to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which Moonee Valley is located, the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay respects to their spirits, ancestors, community members and elders past, present and emerging. We also extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Item 3 on the agenda is apologies and leave of absence, and we have a full complement of councillors this evening, and I have not received any requests for leave of absence. Item 4 is the confirmation of minutes. So, councillors, I'll seek a mover and a seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on Tuesday, the 28th of September 2021 be confirmed. Moved Councillor Bedio, seconded Councillor Tyson. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, and that's carried unanimously. Item 5 is declarations of conflicts of interest. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest in any item on the agenda this evening? There being none, we move to item 6, presentations. Councillors, do we have any presentations this evening? There being none, we move to item 7, petitions and joint letters. Councillors, do we have any petitions or joint letters this evening? There being none, we'll move to item 8, public question time. And we've not received any questions from the community for tonight's meeting. Item 9 is reports from delegated committees, and we have no reports from delegated committees this evening. So we will now move to section 10, being council reports. The first council report this evening is report 10.1, titled Alcohol Restrictions under clause 4.19 of Council's Activities and General Amenities Local Law 2018. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an additional point and then some reordering. As governance has a copy of this, is it okay if I just read the additional point C and just note the reordering? Is that okay?
Yes,
rather than read the whole thing?
Yep.
So the additional point C is to request the CEO or the Chief Executive Officer to immediately commence the steps required to pursue option 2, review and amend the map to cover expanded area or the whole municipality, informed by appropriate community and stakeholder engagement prior to making a decision. Then with the additional words option 1 in point D, seek a detailed report in early 2022 to recommend a longer term solution, option 1, and then the reordered version as submitted to governance.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Can I get a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. The reason this has come up at council is that our local laws currently don't match the intentions of councillors when introducing the alcohol restriction areas about a decade ago. At that time, largely in response to antisocial alcohol-related behaviour and amenity issues, a large part of Moonee Ward and areas along Mount Road and Keilor Road were designated areas where alcohol could not be consumed on roads, footpaths and in parks without a permit after 9 p.m. The intention was to reduce, among other things, amenity impacts from people spilling out into the street after drinking at licensed venues. Across the rest of Moonee Valley, more relaxed amenity provisions were in place, reflecting the fact that there were far fewer issues. When the restriction areas were introduced, we were very sensitive to issues of harm minimisation enforcement and unintended impacts on vulnerable communities. The management of alcohol-related harms and issues is very complex. Somehow in 2018, when new laws were passed, the intentions were swapped around and the alcohol restriction areas became the areas where people could have alcohol before 9 p.m, and the rest of Moonee Valley became subject to having no alcohol on any road or council land without a permit. So we currently have in place a mismatch between the legal effect of the alcohol restriction areas and the intent. And this is of some importance in our pandemic picnic context, where having a glass of wine with a friend in a park within applicable COVID restrictions is a safer option than being indoors. So we're looking at what our community and stakeholders would like to do to resolve this issue. We've had some legal advice, as noted in the report and the resolution, and we've been advised that we can either extend the 9 p.m. map over all of the municipality and undertake the rigorous process involved in changing a local law. So this motion asks the CEO to start the process to seek community feedback on whether we should extend the map across all of Moonee Valley ahead of looking at the issue more deeply next year. The majority of people who drink alcohol in Moonee Valley do so really responsibly. However, in looking at this issue, it is really important to recognise that alcohol consumption does carry complex social, health and amenity consequences. Our draft health plan notes that 47% of people in Moonee Valley have risky levels of alcohol consumption, and alcohol can cause short and long-term health and social harms. Alcohol, I did in some research today note that alcohol can be attributed to nearly 5% of deaths in Australia, but that is less than Russia's 20%. It is a challenging area of public policy and law, and that's been borne out in Moonee Valley, where our local laws have caused some confusion. We need to balance the many different ways alcohol is used, knowing that it can also be abused. And as a governing body, my view is that we really need to undertake the solid work to make sure we have evidence-based local laws that seek as their aim the reduction of harm, rather than criminalisation of a drug that has created vulnerable cohorts of the community. It's a very finely balanced exercise. But the first step to working through this is to undertake community and stakeholder engagement to gauge different views about managing alcohol in public places within Moonee Valley. And I look forward to hearing and responding to community feedback on this issue. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson, you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have very much to add to that. I think, you know, it's an odd contradiction that our alcohol restricted areas have provision for more easy picnics in the park than the unrestricted areas. And it's something certainly, you know, we're very keen to make sure that our local laws are proportionate and respond to real issues. So we want to make sure we understand what those real issues are. We'll speak to everyone that might be impacted and make sure that our local laws match and respond to what our communities need in terms of protecting safety and amenity, but also allowing for enjoyment of our open spaces and maximising that.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Isa, wish to close? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Report 10.2 is titled Quinn Grove Precinct Plan. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Tyson.
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Byrne. Councillor Tyson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. This plan is about getting on with our precinct in Quinn Grove, particularly with what's been discussed a lot over the last year and a half of a highball stadium in Moonee Valley. We've already received a fair bit of feedback and chatter online, and I'd like to thank the East Keilor Tennis Club for reaching out, and I know they'll be a part of the consultation going forward, looking at additional tennis courts. I think as much as maybe some councillors and some community members disagree with the location of the highball court, and some locals have raised with me traffic concerns and the like, the great thing about this is it is getting on with what we need to be doing, in terms of setting a pipeline of projects going forward, and getting on with a really, really large investment in our community. And the great thing about this plan and the motion is that the CEO and our officers can consider other locations as they arise, and look at everything as we go through the consultation process. So I'm looking forward to getting feedback and getting on with it.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Councillor Byrne, wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I will. Thank you, Councillor Tyson, for moving this motion. And I'd also like to thank everyone who has contributed to this draft master plan so far. We obviously started this a couple of years ago, and it's taken a long time to get to this point. There's obviously so many different stakeholders that have contributed to this plan, and obviously moving the pieces around like a jigsaw puzzle to try to fit everything in at once has its challenges, but I'm really delighted to, hopefully, if this gets through tonight, be able to present it to the community. So there's obviously a few things that are spoken about a lot, but I'll touch on the things that aren't necessarily spoken about a lot first. So there's a fitness station play space, outdoor multi-use places, and lots of tree plantings. The car parking is an interesting design where it can cut straight through. That is something that I'm got no doubt will come up in the consultation if it goes out to community consultation. I do want to say that there is no property acquisition in this plan. There has been thoughts that it was taking over Noga Avenue. It certainly is not. So just if anyone from Noga Avenue is watching that, definitely no property acquisition. The things that are obviously big and appealing that a lot of people talk about is obviously the use of the school grounds. This is something as a council we need to be smart about, and something that will be happening a lot more going forward. We know that we're landlocked. We know that we don't have a lot of space. And this is a great precinct where we already have a $50 million existing infrastructure of the Keilor East Leisure Centre, which is now obviously officially open, which is super exciting. Right next to a school which has an abundance of underutilised space. So it's a great opportunity for council to work closely with residents, community members, and obviously the school to be able to utilise that space in a way that it works for everyone. So as a result, there's obviously a ground which has the soccer, the AFL, and it might even, and the potentially cricket line markings. I feel like that's going to come up in consultation, and I think that it's really important that it does. Obviously, we've had an existing soccer pitch which hasn't necessarily been dual lined, even though it has been used for multiple different sports. So that'll be interesting to see what the feedback comes back with. Tennis, as Councillor Tyson mentioned, there's obviously been, the tennis club have been quite positive about this plan. They know that they're outgrowing their space. In line with the 2018 tennis strategy, we have a tennis court shortage within the municipality. Mayor, I might just ask for a short extension of time, if that's okay.
Happy to grant.
Thank you. We know that we've got a tennis court shortage, but we're not actually increasing the amount of tennis courts in this plan. So it might be a really good opportunity to actually put in more tennis courts. So they've got 6 at the moment, going up to 10 potentially is a possibility. I'm sure that we'll hear more feedback of that. It makes a lot of sense to put a couple in and potentially reduce some of the car parking. So whether we want tennis courts, more car parking, all of this stuff can still obviously be worked through. And obviously the big one, as Councillor Tyson has touched on, there's been a lot of work in regards to where we place a highball stadium. So netball, basketball, volleyball, whatever it might be used for. We designed the Keilor East Leisure Centre so that it could attach onto the back, and there's obviously a lot of great cost savings to be able to do this. The other thing that will come up will be the timing of the project. This obviously isn't due to be completed for quite a period of time, but I feel like taking this next step is a possibility to potentially bring it forward. I feel like we will be raising the expectations of people, and it might be a really good opportunity if we do get an endorsed master plan to really go hard at the state and federal level for funding the project. The other thing that it will be good to look into is any sort of funding opportunities potentially through the private market if there was, say, consulting suites attached to the Highball Stadium, which is similar to what Brimbank Council have done with their one of their new leisure centres.
I'll just call you on. Finish the sentence. Finish the sentence.
So there'll be tweaks to the plan. This is just the next step of the draft. It's so exciting, and I hope we get a lot of great feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. The time I gave you an extra minute there. I wasn't granting you that. Any other councillor wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Sypek.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back in 2010, this whole precinct was pretty much sort of not derelict, but it was sort of run down a little bit. The leisure centre was built in 1967 by the then Keilor Council, and firstly the community was the ones that brought this up back in 2010, and it just started off as thoughts from the community, what they wanted to see there, and then it started snowballing and started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually we've got the leisure centre built now, we've got the soccer pitch there built now, and now we've got this master plan. So this has been a process since 2010, and I would just like to say thank you to the community, because the community were the ones that have put all this together. The community are the ones who have asked for it, and hopefully we as a council can deliver this master plan sometime in the future to the community. So, Mr. Mayor, on behalf of myself and my fellow colleagues, I want to thank the community for their great input into this.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. And obviously the ward councillors have a lot of enthusiasm for this project, and that's great to see. And it's obviously reflecting the enthusiasm of, as Councillor Sypek says, the community who've been quite patient in the process that's been undertaken. Also know how much highball facilities mean to a large number of Moonee Valley residents, particularly in Moonong ward, and there's been discussion about different locations that may be appropriate for highball facilities, but I think the message that I've heard loud and clear is that it doesn't really matter where, that there might be multiple locations needed over the next couple of decades, and if council can make a start somewhere, that would be the community would look forward to seeing that that being initiated. So I know how much that means to many Moonong ward residents, as well as Rosehill and Buckley. There are some other quite interesting aspects to this project, and Councillor Byrne spoke about one of those, and that's the interaction with the school and the potential partnership that can emerge from this with respect to both the use and potentially different sort of arrangements around funding opportunities. And it is a really interesting model, and I really look forward to seeing how that can progress. I'm also quite interested in the management models that might be considered, given the different stakeholders, and balancing club and wider community use of facilities, something that we're obviously increasingly keen to pursue. And so any feedback that comes through the consultation process around how facilities might be shared and managed, I'll be really interested in as well. Look, it's always exciting to be envisaging new spaces and new facilities, and I look forward to doing whatever we can to make sure we get the plans right. So I look forward to hearing what people think.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Apologies, Mayor. Look, I just wanted to say I really agree with everything that's been said so far. I think many of us over the last year were fortunate enough to make a few trips up to see the progress of the East Keilor Leisure Centre, and I think the brand new, really state-of-the-art facilities stand quite starkly against the condition of the other facilities up there, and it's really great to see that we're taking those steps towards delivering something, hopefully, that will really meet the needs of the community up there. And thanks, Councillor Byrne, for drawing attention to all of the very varied parts of this plan that have been put together. it's a really great piece of work, and I love seeing these master plans because I think they really do reflect those diverse groups of the people that will eventually use the space, we hope. So, people of all age groups, of all abilities, of all interest areas. So it's a really great master plan. Looking forward to hearing community feedback on it.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Tyson, you wish to close?
Only to say that the report's about 4 months away, I think, and I'm sure that time will fly as we're exiting COVID.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item report 10.3 on the agenda is response to notice of motion number 2020-30, traffic measures in Kent Street, Flemington. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an amended point C to read, conduct a holistic traffic management investigation of the surrounding area, including further assessment of traffic speeds and volumes, and consideration of any further measures, bracket, including street lighting, auditing signage, and raised crossings, close bracket, as part of the Newmarket Local Area Traffic Management Study.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, wish to speak to your motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Kent Street is quite a key road in Flemington, Newmarket, and this sort of side of Ascot Vale. It's used by pedestrians, cyclists, and light and medium vehicles. It's part of the network of roads to access the showgrounds and the racecourse. The reduction to 40 kilometres has made a significant difference, as noted in the traffic data. Although it is also noted in the data that it's also noted that the data was collected during COVID. That's been pointed out to me by a number of residents. But I do want to assure residents that it wasn't during a lockdown period that the data counts were made. This motion arose due to concerns about pedestrian safety, and the report does indicate that while the speeds have been reduced in response to the traffic measures, the speeds at two of the outer crossings are a bit higher and some treatments are warranted. I'd like to thank the officers immensely for looking into this so rigorously and thoroughly, and for suggesting improvements, and for noting that further assessment and works can be explored as part of the future Newmarket Local Area Traffic Management Study. I'm just going to really quickly just read a couple of comments, a bit of feedback that has been sent to me in the past couple of days. I think it's really valuable to hear from the people who are most impacted on or are most aware of these issues, because while they can seem like quite small issues when we're looking at the whole municipality, streets are where people live each day and they're part of their daily experience. So I'm just going to share some views of locals, just I guess for colleagues to perhaps pick up on some of that really local experience, and for other community members to hear that. This is from one family who wrote, "We're residents of the west end of Kent Street and right in support of the recommendation. We offer the following observations from daily walks with our children in the area. Traffic approaching the Tunbridge Street pedestrian crossing tends to gain speed coming down the incline from the rail overpass. We've experienced many near misses when attempting to use the crossing. Traffic entering Kent Street from Ascot Vale Road often maintains a speed of 60 kilometres per hour. We'd be grateful if you could consider recommending improved signage to the west and east ends of Kent Street, more clearly advising drivers leaving a 60 kilometre per hour zone that they're entering a 40 kilometre hour zone." Another wrote, "My family are regular users of the zebra crossing at Oriana Court, and despite recently improved traffic measures, have had many near misses with cars travelling at speeds that only seem to see us stepping onto the crossing at the very last minute. One additional suggestion would be that additional street lighting be considered at the Oriana Court crossing, as the recently installed street light is not directly above the crossing, causing pedestrians to be lit from behind for vehicles approaching." And finally, another wrote, "I live in Kent Street. I'm very happy about the changes implemented so far. I feel much safer about my kids crossing the road, and the most and the most be slowed down traffic, I fully support the recommendations. Outside of our house, we have the slowdown in the middle of the road. It has no signage or plantings, and so cars pick up speed and go over it. Can council put a sign in and a tree in an effort to slow down traffic? Also, as part of Kent Street traffic measures, there was a plan to change the Mount Road and Kent Street intersection so that traffic exiting Kent Street and particularly turning right into Mount Road could do so earlier. And he asks, has more been developed in this area? And it's something that I'll follow up. So, Mayor, there are some further considerations that I'm hoping will be can be considered as part of the LADAM study in 2022. The 40-kilometre signage at the entrances to Kent Street, lighting, further plantings, and Mount Road and Kent Street intersection. But thanks again to the officers for their work on this.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson, you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Isa. I think you've covered a lot of really important points there. Like Councillor Isa, I've been contacted several times with families. There's a lot of young families who live around the area, not just on Kent Street, but in the surrounding residential streets. And I think it's a bit of an anomaly, Kent Street, in that it is a very high traffic road that, but in the middle of a very residential and, area with a lot of young families, and parents are wanting to allow their kids to go out and make use of the open spaces around, but want to make sure that their kids are going to be safe. And I think this is also a really great example of council responding to some of those concerns in the traffic measures that they did install, and taking the time to assess the efficacy of those and come back with suggested modifications. So I'd again echo Councillor Isa's thanks to the officers for the work on this, and note as well that there's another chance to further review and perhaps, undertake a further assessment once we experience a more COVID normal, less when there's more traffic on the roads as we open up, something closer to what we will experience in the future in terms of traffic volumes along Kent Street. And we can review again with that information when we come to the Newmarket local area traffic management study. So another chance to review and suggest further modifications if needed.
Thanks, Councillor Hodgson. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Isa, wish to close?
Only that I meant to note there's a slight misprint in the report. Paragraphs 120, 121 and 122 should refer to 173, house number 173, not house number 143, just in case anyone was confused by that. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. So I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Report 10.4 on the agenda is response to petition reduction in speed limit Woodland Street, Essendon. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an amendment, please.
Yep.
So at part A of the recommendation, point 2, I'll add some more wording to the end. So it will read, ensures that the Woodland Street Integrated Transport Improvement Works adequately addresses speed and road safety issues, including investigating an appropriate, safe pedestrian crossing for access from the Strathmore side of Woodland Street to Woodlands Park.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sharp. Councillor Adams, you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please. Thanks, Mayor. A petition was tabled by Council at its meeting on the 13th of April 2021, containing 10 signatures and requesting Council implement a reduction in the speed limit in Woodland Street, Essendon to 40 kilometres per hour. I just want to say a big thank you to the residents who organised this petition. I live in Essendon and use Woodland Street every other day, so I know firsthand the issues raised by residents. And it's very clear from this report prepared by officers that there are issues in this street. Woodland Street is classified as a major arterial road designed to accommodate 5,000 to 10,000 vehicles per day. The Department of Transport are responsible for the management and maintenance of this road under the Road Management Act 2004. And this motion refers the matter to the Department of Transport and our local member to consider the petition's request to implement a reduction in the speed limit. I'd also like to note that in November 2018, the state government announced the Woodland Street Integrated Transport Improvement Works, a $3.5 million program to improve sustainable transport infrastructure along Woodland Street, including upgraded provisions for on-road cycling. And so this motion also asks that, given the road safety and crash history, a holistic review of speed and road safety issues be incorporated into the Department of Transport-led Woodland Street Integrated Transport Improvement Works to improve pedestrian and cyclist safety at this location. I've specifically added some wording to investigate a pedestrian crossing for access to Woodlands Park from the Strathmore side. It's such a busy road and I see so many pedestrians, families and children trying to navigate the traffic to cross the road to the park. And so this will ask Council to advocate for this safety feature, as at the moment there isn't any safe access point to Woodlands Park from the Strathmore side. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Sharp, wish to speak to the motion?
Happy to advocate for better conditions along Woodland Street, so happy to support.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Adams, wish to close? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Council Report 10.5 is the proposed sale of land at the rear of 70 Muskoma Street, Strathmore. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an amendment, please.
Yep.
So at part C of the recommendation, I'll add some wording to the end. So it will read, resolve to transfer net proceeds from the sale and in brackets after associated costs to the property reserve, in brackets Buckley Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Isa. Councillor Adams, you wish to speak to the motion?
I will, thanks, Mayor. So this land is located between Moonee Ponds Creek and Strathmore North Primary School at the rear of 70 Muskoma Street, Strathmore. The land is currently fenced within the school and has been exclusively occupied and maintained with uninterrupted use by the Strathmore North Primary School for more than 15 years. The land has been deemed surplus to Council and not required for municipal purposes. Council and the Department of Education have jointly instructed the Valuer General of Victoria to undertake a market valuation for the land. In accordance with local government best practice guidelines for the sale, exchange and transfer of land, Council will sell the land for current market value and the valuation will be no less than 6 months old. Council will be receiving current market value in exchange for the land, and these funds will be utilised for future property acquisitions consistent with Council plans. In my amendment, I have added that these funds be transferred to the property reserve, Buckley Ward, so we can reinvest in the area during budget discussions. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Isa, wish to speak to the motion? No? Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, as no one has spoken, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Report 10.6 is certification of the performance statement and governance and management checklist 2020-2021. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an amendment, please.
Yep. Go for it.
So the amendment is to add 2 points to the end of the motion. So part E and F, so I'll read those out. I have sent the words through to governance as well. So Part E would read, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to make any non-material changes to the performance statement that may arise from the completion of audit and internal review procedures, and provide a summary of such changes to the Audit and Risk Committee at its next meeting. And F, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to make any material changes to the performance statement that may arise from the completion of audit and internal review procedures after discussion with the Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee and reporting to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Adams, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. This motion seeks to approve and certify the 2021 performance statement and governance and management checklist, and submits the certified performance statement to the Victorian Auditor General's Office for final audit approval. The performance statement is an accountability document setting out results achieved by Council against a prescribed set of sustainable capacity, service performance and financial indicators, and is an interesting document to read as it does provide explanatory commentary regarding performance between the current and previous year. Both the performance statement and the governance and management checklist must be included in the annual report in order to meet legislative obligations, and have been received, noted and approved in principle by the Audit and Risk Committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Adams. Councillor Hodgson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. I'm really happy to support this one. I think the performance statement in particular is a really good read. It came about through legislative changes and requirements for local councils to report in a bit more of a consistent way. So I suppose they had a comparison across councils, but what it's produced is, you know, a much easier to read for if you're someone like me who struggles to read through some annual reports. I have to work quite hard to extract all of the information in an annual report format. It really does speak quite well to how we're performing as a council, how we're supporting our workforce and our community, and some of those, it really gives an overall picture of the health of our organisation and what we're delivering on. So I think it's a really great document. The governance and management checklist, again, just gives a clear indication of some of the policies and plans that we have or will have. And I note that there are a couple, the 10-year financial plan and the 10-year asset plan, that are forthcoming and will be delivered within the required timeframes. But both of these documents are a really great read, and I think a really great addition to our annual report.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly on the governance and management checklist, we've obviously sat in this chamber before, well, four of us have sat in this chamber before and have seen this checklist where it definitely hasn't had as many ticks on it as what it has this time. So that's obviously credit to the CEO and the team to ensure that we are getting more ticks on that page. For the two ones that don't have the tick yet, that's because we haven't had to meet that requirement yet, but they look like they're well on track. So that's noted, and I think that it's a really good progress in the right direction. So it's really, really good reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Adams, wish to close? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Report 10.7 is 2020/21 annual financial statements. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an amendment, please.
Yep.
So adding 2 points to the end of the officer's recommendation. So Part D to read, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to make any non-material changes to the annual financial report that may arise from the completion of audit and internal review procedures, and provide a summary of such changes to the Audit and Risk Committee at its next meeting. And E, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to make any material changes to the annual financial report that may arise from the completion of audit and internal review procedures after discussion with the Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee and reporting to Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Adams, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The 2021 annual financial report has been prepared in accordance with the relevant legislation and the Australian accounting standards by Council's Finance Department in consultation with Victorian Auditor General's Office. VAGO has completed the external audit of the 2021 annual financial report, and the Audit Committee reviewed the annual financial report at the meeting held on Monday, the 20th of September 2021, to provide Council with confidence that all issues have been resolved and the annual financial report has been prepared in accordance with good governance principles. A letter of representation has been provided from management to Council. The officers have included in their report a summary interpretation of the accounts, which I will read out for those at home watching. I'll start with the income statement. This is all very riveting and exciting. As at the 30th of June 2021, Council reported a net operating surplus of $14.54 million and compares to a budgeted operating surplus of $3.21 million. The impact of COVID-19 has resulted in material variances in statutory and user fees. The impact of the pandemic and subsequent lockdowns on leisure centre operations was not as severe as budgeted, $2.3 million ahead of budget, but the lockdowns resulted in loss of parking fine revenue of $2.6 million. Council's support of the community included reduction in commercial rent income of $0.1 million, loss in revenue of $0.42 million due to fee relief offered to community groups, and an allocation towards a COVID-19 recovery package resulting in direct costs of $0.85 million. Offsetting the negative impacts of the pandemic was additional funding received in operating grants of $3.65 million, capital grants of $1.4 million, and contribution of assets of $4.56 million. The balance sheet indicates that the Council's overall financial position and its cash and liquidity position are sound and within acceptable financial parameters. Council's total equity as at the 30th of June 2021 was $2.74 billion, which is a $268.39 million increase on 2019 to 2020. This was predominantly due to the revaluation of land and infrastructure assets. Overall cash flow increased by $7.57 million due to a loan of $10 million established in June 2021. Capital expenditure for the year ended 30 June 2021 was $50.32 million, which was $13.23 million below budget. The delivery of some projects was delayed where COVID-19 stage 4 restrictions impacted construction works. Major projects to be carried forward into 21-22 include the East Keilor Leisure Centre, Fairbairn Park, ICT plan implementation, military road traffic signals, and multiple local area traffic management studies for implementation. While Council's financial position has been adversely impacted by COVID-19, the annual financial report indicates that Council's overall financial position remains sound for the financial year ended 30 June 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Bedio, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Adams. I think your amendments are quite straightforward and reasonable, makes sense. I just want to commend the finance officers, the executive leadership team and the Audit and Risk Committee for going through these documents with a fine-tooth comb. It was quite a laborious exercise, and I know a lot of us worked over the weekend a few weeks ago to make sure that these documents are accurate. So I just again want to say a big thank you to the officers that put this together. Overall, quite a good result considering quite a difficult year that we've had. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If Councillor Hodgson.
Love to sneak in there, Mayor, when you're ready to go to the vote. Look, I just wanted to echo Councillor Bedio's thanks, and Councillor Bedio, as a member of the Audit and Risk Committee, thank you, and thank Councillor Adams and Councillor Sypek for your hard work, and our independent members of the committee as well. It is, I think, a real testament to the strength of the organisation that we're still in a solid position after the tough year we've had, and I know that we're working really hard as well to make sure that, you know, we are in a position that a lot of our community members need our support, and we need to still be able to provide and offer that support despite taking a few hits ourselves financially. And I think that we've really managed to achieve that and still, you know, remain, have some strong financial management, and that is thanks to our CEO and our finance team, and really our whole council for, you know, really managing and stretching every dollar to make sure that we can continue to deliver for the community.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Adams, for a very comprehensive speech on that. There's not a lot else to cover. I note that you spoke about the cash position being sound, and I completely agree, but I do think we do need to look at our cash flow. Very mindful that in this it does say that our overall cash flow increased by 7.57 million due to a loan of $10 million that we received. It's just something that going forward we have to make sure that it's we're heading in the right direction, and as a council we may need to make some big decisions in that space. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Adams, wish to close? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Report 10.8 is naming proposal for 2 pocket parks, Flemington and Moonee Ponds, commencement of community consultation. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move, I'm just going to read the motion, that Council resolves to approve the commencement of a community consultation process to ask the community, including local historical groups, schools nearby, and the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Cultural Heritage Aboriginal Corporation, to submit naming ideas for the following pocket park locations at 177A Mount Alexander Road, Flemington, and 236 Patterson Street, Moonee Ponds.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, naming things is lots of fun, although naming children can be very, very stressful. Naming properties is probably just as stressful, but it's also a fun time to get suggestions from the community, and this is kickstarting that process. Council's the relevant naming authority under various legislation, and so we are inviting people to, through the consultation process, to submit ideas for names, and there are some really quite strict rules that are associated with naming public places, and so that'll all be conveyed to people as part of the consultation. I'm sure, I was thinking about this, I'm sure that if you asked anyone in Flemington at the moment, if you referred to the Flemington Pocket Park and sort of asked them if they knew where it was, I'm sure that they would say, oh, you mean AJ's. So, it's funny that places sometimes take on local connotations or local significance, and names often reflect that. But names can also reflect any number of other things, whether it's Indigenous connections or other connections of the past. And so this is a real opportunity for people to think about these two places in Moonee ward and what these places might mean for the local community, and suggest some names. In the motion there, also just referring to schools, 177A Mount Alexander Road obviously is pretty much on the, it is right adjacent to Mount Alexander College and across the road from Flemington Primary School. So it might be a really good exercise for those schools to engage in some history lessons, looking at what names might be appropriate for spaces, and other schools might like to be engaged in the naming process as well. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Reiser. Councillor Hodgson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Councillor Reiser took the words right out of my mouth. It is fun to name things. And this is, I think, the first of these very early stages of the report since we disbanded the place naming committee, and I think it's really great, for the hundreds of people I'm sure are watching our meeting to get that alert that this is coming out for your suggestions. Time to, as you say, Councillor Reiser, get the history research happening, get the creative juices flowing, and come up with a name for our 2 new pocket parks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Reiser wish to close. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 10.9 on the agenda is naming proposal for 2 roads in Niddrie, commencement of community consultation. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Tyson.
I move the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Tyson, do I have a seconder? Councillor Byrne. Councillor Tyson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. This is in relation to 2 roads where I actually used to live near Newman Street and the Avenue. And what's happened is essentially the numbering along the street has sort of run out, and we've hit a bit of a roadblock with it. And so what's being proposed is to rename small parts of the streets, so keep the overall street name intact, but parts of it renamed, and go out to the community, as Councillor Reiser was sort of touching on in the last piece, to get feedback from the community, local historical groups, and others. And one of the suggestions I've heard from a particular individual so far is Nation Boulevard, which I'm not so sure about. So I am keen to hear from more of the community about it. But one other interesting part of this, and I think part of my lockdown madness, was actually going on a crusade against a nearby local council that won't be named, where there are a lot of rules with naming streets. And if we were to name the avenue now, it actually wouldn't be allowed. Another one is apostrophes. So there's no apostrophes allowed. A lot of other really small quirks, but that was definitely my sort of lockdown madness hobby. And I'm pleased to report I did win that fight against that council. So that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Shame I'm only worth a boulevard. Councillor Byrne, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. And I think you might have to be dead to have a street named after you, so I'm not sure whether that's a good thing for you, Councillor Nation. So anyway, moving on. I really wish in a way that we were in Moonee Ward's situation at the moment, because they're really exciting about naming their pocket parks, and I think that is a really exciting process. But I do feel for the residents in this situation, because they might have really loved living on, the Avenue or Newman Street, and changing a name. It's not a great process for us, and it's not going to be fun. And it's quite stressful having to change your license and change where all your bills go and your deliveries, and people will get confused for a while. But obviously, we do need to go down this path. So it's sort of about just getting it over and done with, sort of working through the process, and ensuring that the communication is really, I suppose, smooth to the residents, so that they understand that we want to make sure that if an ambulance gets called, it can easily identify the house. So we've done this thing before. It's not pleasant, but it will happen and we will get there eventually, I hope. But hopefully we will be renaming Pogger Parks in Rose Hill Ward, and that will definitely be a joyous experience at some point too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I mean, it's interesting looking at the maps, the way that the subdivisions have created this particular issue, and I do think it's probably some short-term pain for some long-term gain in terms of having a clearer identification of the streets for people. It's interesting, there are a couple of similar streets in Flemington where I always get caught out because the streets are named, but there's no houses with that address. So it's sort of the reverse issue. So, you know, street names can, you know, they've been something that's evolved over time. Development has evolved to the situation where we do need to address this particular situation. So I do hope that the residents use it as perhaps can use it as a community building exercise to come up with something that's really meaningful for the community. And can get over that short-term inconvenience for the longer-term convenience.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Tyson, wish to close?
Taking on all suggestions, I was wondering as well whether, if it's currently called the Avenue, maybe it could be called the Crescent or the Boulevard or the Circuit. But that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Report 10.10 is Legislated Review 2021 Council Delegations. Councillors, do I have a motion? Last one, councillors. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Hodgson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, as with, I think it was a couple of meetings ago, this is a pretty standard review of the instruments of delegation, and with really no change to the current conditions. They've been reviewed and they're still consistent with the legislative requirements and the language in them. It's quite a long recommendation. It's reasonably straightforward and administrative, but towards the end, there is an exciting addition of a couple of members to our Neighbourhood Spirit Delegated Committee. As we embarked on this process last year, I believe it was Councillor Sypek made an excellent suggestion to include some members of the community on that delegated committee, and so we're inviting the current and previous winners of the Citizen of the Year Award to join that committee and help us to assess the nominations for our next Neighbourhood Spirit Award winners and Citizen of the Year.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Bedio, wish to speak to the motion? Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, as no one's spoken, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. That concludes our council reports. We now move to item 11, notices of motion, and we have no notices of motion listed tonight. Item 12 is urgent business, and I'll ask if any councillor has an item of urgent business for this evening's meeting. There being none, we move to confidential reports, and we have 2 confidential reports listed this evening. So, councillors, I'll shortly ask for a motion that the meeting be closed to members of the public in accordance with Section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 to allow for consideration of confidential information under the following sections, being G, private commercial information, being information provided by a business, commercial or financial undertaking that, 2, if released, would unreasonably expose the business, commercial or financial undertaking to disadvantage. The item contains tenderers' commercial and financial information, and F, personal information being information which, if released, would result in the unreasonable disclosure of information about any person or their personal affairs. The item contains personal information of the Audit and Risk Committee members. I'll seek a mover. Councillor Bedio, seconded Councillor Tyson. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. So as we're about to move into the confidential section of the meeting, we'll say goodnight to those of you watching via the live stream. A reminder that tonight's agenda included some items where we're going out to community consultation. So please, if you are interested in being part of that process, get in touch with council. A reminder as well that our next council meeting is on the 26th of October, and then we have an extra meeting on Thursday, the 28th of October, which is our annual statutory meeting. The final note I'd like to make is that the Deputy Mayor and myself had the pleasure of broadcasting down at the Incinerator Gallery as permitted under CHO guidelines as part of our annual Incinerator Art Awards. Now, this is our biggest art event of the year down at the Incinerator, and sadly it's shifted predominantly online. So I really encourage everyone to jump on the Moonee Valley website or directly to the Incinerator Gallery website and have a look at the exhibition. Many of the pieces are virtual exhibits, so you can watch from home. And then the intention is that the Incinerator Art Awards will be pushed back from the 5th to the 28th of November for people to go down to the gallery and see the works in person. So I strongly commend in any spare time you have to jump online and have a look. That's where we will leave you this evening. Thank you for watching online, and we'll see you